The world of Monster Hunter is vast and full of unexplored corners. It is also a land that I have been trying to map out for quite some time. This video is the 4th episode of my current, most serious attempt at creating a world map for Monster Hunter, using as many different official sources as I can find. Games, lore books, developer interviews, all can hold morsels of valuable insight into these lands. In previous episodes, we pondered the locations from the first 3 generations of games, up to and including Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate. Today, we take on what is maybe the biggest hurdle to mapping Monster Hunter: the 4th generation games, which are Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate and Generations Ultimate. Not only do these games together introduce the greatest number of in-game locations yet, they also suffer from having very little official lore about them. The lore book of Monster Hunter 4 is notoriously cagey compared to previous entries, and Generations Ultimate did not even get a bespoke book. This is going to be quite challenging, and I must stress anew that these placements will inherently be based on assumptions and guesswork, indicated with a little red star icon, to differentiate them from places that do have a hard confirmed location. Alright, enough delaying, time to get started. Luckily, this time, we actually have 2 completely confirmed locations that we can get out of the way first. If you recall, Hunter's Encyclopedia 2, which is the main source for all confirmed map locations, also confirmed that this crescent island here is Cheeko, the land of Wyverians. Hunter's Encyclopedia 4, in turn, directly states that the village of Cathar, which we visit in Monster Hunter 4, is in fact on this island. While we don't get an exact location, we know it's somewhere on there. From this, we can also glean the location of a hunting ground, the Heaven's Mount. In its brief description in Encyclopedia 4, it is stated that Cathar village sits at the base of this mountain. I realize this is something that is also communicated in-game, but come on, it does feel nice to have a book source for it as well. Either way, this allows us to comfortably place Heaven's Mount on Cheeko as well, right around Cathar. But this is all the hard confirmations we get. Now is the hour for speculation and deduction. As usual, we will first start with towns. The first town location the player encounters in Monster Hunter 4 is Habar, a lively merchant's gathering. This place cannot be found on any maps, because Habar is a traveling city, changing locations regularly as the merchants follow the gathering hub the town is centralized around. It is a place of hunting, trade, and entertainment. Now, first things first. Yes, Habar does technically not have any set location, as it travels around. What we will try to determine is thus simply its location during the events of Monster Hunter 4. There is some evidence to suggest that the town stops by this area regularly though. Hunter's Encyclopedia 4 mentions that Habar has a deep relationship with the Daren Moran, a giant desert dragon that the village often seeks out in times of festivity, which often leads them to this general region. It is this relationship that gives us our first few clues as to Habar's location. During the intro of Monster Hunter 4, a Daren Moran attacks ships heading to the town, and only barely stops short of destroying it. From this scene, we discover that Habar is near a great desert and has sea access. The latter is also verbally confirmed by dialogue from the Habar Master, who appears in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate as a side character. Now, if you recall last episode, we asserted that the Great Desert seen in Monster Hunter 3 and the one seen in Monster Hunter 4 are actually the same desert, simply separated into two distinct jurisdictions, based on how the Great Desert descriptions is worded in Hunter's Encyclopedia 4, and the fact that the Daren Moran can attack both Habar and Dundorma. Reminder, this is an assumption on my part, and not at all confirmed. But using this as a springboard, we can narrow Habar's location down to being somewhere near its own Great Desert territory, which itself must be near the 3rd gen Great Desert. Looking at the cutscene where the Daren Moran nearly crashes into the city, we can see that Habar is essentially sandwiched between desert and sea. Considering that, this spot right here seems to fit really well. It is centrally located, which would be great as a regular spot for a merchant town, and has access to both desert and sea. Note that the shape and size of the Habar Great Desert shown here is entirely hypothetical. We really have no idea about that. Also worth reminding you that this is the case for all hunting grounds. The colored areas are just approximation of where it might be, not how big it actually is. Next up, we have Harth, the only village in the series where we get to meet Trovarians, a race of mole-like people that all excel at metalwork and blacksmithing. Harth is built into a volcanic mountainscape, and the lava that flows through this region is used to power the forges and machines of the Trovarians. This town is adjacent to the Volcanic Hollow hunting ground. Now, if you've been watching the previous episodes, you know what I'm about to say. Volcanic activity in the old world? Oh boy, that sounds like Erude. Lucky for me, there is actually a decent amount of evidence to suggest that Harth and the Volcanic Hollow are, in fact, on or near my favorite volcanic peninsula. They both need to be somewhat close to Habar, as the caravan our hunter joins in Monster Hunter 4 gets there by land in what appears to be a fairly reasonable amount of travel time. In the cutscene that shows their arrival in Harth, we get a pretty good look at the surroundings. Harth and the Hollow seem to border on a curving seashore and a mountain range extending away from the direction the caravan is approaching from. This alone already gives us a pretty good possible spot for this village, being here at the bend of the Erude Peninsula. This is already my best guess, to be quite honest. No book or in-game dialogue I could find gives us any new clues, so I am comfortable putting it here. Now we move our attention to Cheeko Sands, an odd corner of the world where a gaggle of felines live in a tropical paradise, led by a shipwrecked Wyverian lady. A small nearby island called Sunsnug Isle is home to numerous feline activities. Cheeko is another one of these places that we simply do not get a ton of information on. It's a tropical place bathed in sunshine, so it's probably more to the south. We also know that it is close to the Primal Forest hunting ground, as Little Miss Forge mentions that one of the felines from Cheeko enjoys going on nightly walks near that forest. This is relevant both because it allows us to place both the town and the hunting ground in one fell swoop, but also because it relates to another statement made in the game. The High Questatrix in Habar says at one point, when sending the player to the Primal Forest, that it is a long ride to get there, implying that the Primal Forest, and thus Cheeko, is far away from Habar. As far as statements go, this is already all that we get. But we can dig a little deeper by considering the plot of Monster Hunter 4. Once our caravan gets their ship built, they attempt to travel from Harth to Cathar by sea. Considering where we put Harth on our map, and where we know Cathar to be, we can surmise that their sea route would have looked something like this. Now, this does not go to plan obviously, and after some Gormagala related sea trouble, the ship has to make landfall in Cheeko to recover and regroup. This means that Cheeko is, in all likelihood, somewhere along this path. This is where we just kind of have to make a decision, and I choose to put Cheeko and the adjacent Primal Forest here, on the western coast of the southeastern chunk of the continent. As we already know where Cathar is, we can immediately jump to the only village introduced in Monster Hunter Generations, which is also the last town we have to cover today. Bherna is a small hunting town conjoined with the Volcanic, a research institute that collaborates closely with the Hunters Guild. The Volcanic originally ventured into this area to investigate an ancient limestone mine, which turned out to actually be fossilized remains of a gargantuan monster. As the Volcanic increased its efforts and pulled in more workers to help in this landmark investigation, researchers and hunters began settling down nearby, eventually forming the settlement that is now known as Bherna. The rugged mountain terrain used to make travel here quite difficult, but breakthroughs in airship technology have recently made it extremely easy to move to and from this town. Full honesty here. I thought Bherna was genuinely gonna be impossible to place. Generations Ultimate never received a bespoke lorebook, and all the info we have on it is from a single interview in Principles of Creativity 2, which barely says anything of note about the lore of this place. The landscape is non-distinct, and game dialogue doesn't address its location in any meaningful way beyond simply saying that airship travel has made it very accessible. I was actually kind of close on giving up on this whole project altogether, when GU finally threw me a bone. In the description for the quest, Travelers in Trouble, we learn that a group of travelers who were going from Bherna to Dondorma were attacked by Ioprey in the marshlands, which is GU's name for the Gen 2 swamp. Now, because we know where the marshlands and Dondorma are, we can figure out Bherna's rough location. Remember, the Gen 2 swamp and the city of Dondorma are not placed here because of my assumptions. They are explicitly put here on the map that we see in Encyclopedia 2. Looking at these two confirmed points, the only way for this quest description to make sense is if the travelers were approaching Dondorma from the west, as they would otherwise not have any real reason to be going through the marshlands. This means that, surprisingly, Bherna is actually probably near the Shrade region. We know that the town is surrounded by mountains, and while there could be many mountain ranges that are simply not indicated, I'll choose to stick with the mountains we see drawn on this map, which are just copied exactly from the Encyclopedia 2 map. I think Bherna goes here on the map, nestled between mountains and roughly on the same latitude as Kokoto. I chose this spot because I can imagine there being mountain passes and the like that lead to Dondorma via taking a path through the marshlands. Being online with Kokoto also fits the general climate we see in Bherna. Not 100% sure of this, but frankly, considering I thought this town was gonna kill the map project entirely, this is good enough for me. Now that we have all of the towns, it's time to move on to the hunting grounds. First up is the Ancestral Steppe, the first hunting ground seen in Monster Hunter 4. It is an open grassland surrounding a cluster of mountains, with various ancient red ruins embedded into the landscape. Like many starting maps, the Ancestral Steppe is given a vague location by the game and book and is described to be quite close to the starting village, in this case Habar. How close and in what direction though, that is for us to figure out. There is not a ton to go off of, but if we jump into the map and look around, we can notice that there are large mountains visible to the west and the south. One way to make this work is if the Ancestral Steppe is to the west of Habar, with the mountains being part of the same range that makes up the volcanic belt of Erude. Thus, I am gonna mark a fairly large area as a possible location here. The steppe being to the west of Habar also synergizes well with the next hunting ground we have to cover, which would be the Everwood, a mysterious area full of ancient ruins and unique monsters. This hunting ground is special in that the map layout is different every time the player travels there, adding to its mystery. Many powerful and rare monsters, such as the Orochi Kirin, can be found here. As you might expect from a place meant to be confusing, there is zero info on the forest location as far as the books are concerned, and Monster Hunter 4 itself is also quite cagey about confirming anything about it. However, thanks to one guardsman, we can actually place it on the map with some degree of confidence. In Dundorma, a city guardian will complain about a Yangaruga that has been spotted in the outskirts of Dundorma and ask the player to handle it for him. The resulting quest then takes the player to, drumroll please, the Everwood. This means that this hunting ground has to be close to Dundorma in order to be considered part of, or at least adjacent to, its outskirts. Now, I choose to place it here, to the southeast of the city, near the Great Desert and extending towards the Ancestral Steppe. This adds 2 layers of stability to our assumption. In Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, the Everwood was updated to rarely include desert zones, which one could tie into its proximity to the Great Desert near Dundorma. And the ruins found in the Everwood seem visually kind of related to these found in the Ancestral Steppe, so I could imagine that whatever civilization left them behind could have stretched from the Geocrux Sea all the way down to the steppe. This is just theorizing on my part though, but then again, so is most of this video series. Moving on, we now have to tackle the frozen Seaway. This frigid area is a frozen hellscape ruled over by monsters like the Zamtrios, a place where only the strong survive. Whirlpools surround the frozen sheets that make up this hunting ground. This is another one of those locations that nearly made me give up entirely. You might think that, hey, it's clearly an Arctic region, so at least we know that it should be up north, right? And I am so sorry, but that is actually not the case. The frozen Seaway is described, both in-game and in the books, as a place that was not originally cold. Instead, it is said to have suddenly turned into a frozen waste near instantly a long time ago, during what the Guildmarm describes as a freak weather event. You can see remnants of this in the map. There are massive waves that were frozen solid mid-crash, and the feline settlement of the hunting ground shows glimpses of what this area once looked like. This is fascinating and also very, very bad for us. The frozen Seaway could literally be anywhere. It could be an island or even a tiny, unmarked rock in the open sea that was transformed by whatever happened here. However, I did not give up hope, and with the help of our local lore master Ban Lagiacrus, was able to find a few scattered clues. This hunting ground also appears in Monster Hunter Generations Ultimate, where it will sometimes be inhabited by Gammoth. This massive monster cannot fly, and also does not display the ability to burrow, nor would I assume that it can create ice platforms solid enough for its heavy body to stand on. In short, I see no way in which a Gammoth could cross an ocean. Its presence here might thus imply that the Seaway is at least not a full island, and is somewhat connected to the mainland. For our next clue, we return to Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, in which the quest, Advanced Chumming the Waters, tasks us with killing 2 Zamtrios in the frozen Seaway, because they were preying on and scaring away all the best fish on Sunsnug Isle. This quest is in fact necessary to unlock Green Plesioth in the fishing minigame. Now, the only way this makes any sense is if the frozen Seaway is somewhat close to Sunsnug and thus Cheeko, since that's the only way in which killing these 2 specific Zamtrios would solve this issue. This does make a degree of sense, since the frozen Seaway is only unlocked in the story after reaching Cheeko. Our final piece of evidence is again a visual observation. If we hop into the Seaway map, we can notice that a large green landmass is visible in the south. Considering all of the clues, I choose to place the frozen Seaway here, jutting out at the western shore of the southernmost tip of the continent. The landmass seen in the south of the hunting ground would thus be our first ever glimpse of the shores of Aya. Alright, we are all done with Monster Hunter 4. All that is left now is the hunting grounds introduced in Generations and Generations Ultimate, which are luckily only 2. The first one is the Jurassic Frontier, a land stuck in the ancient past. Long extinct plants grow into a dense landscape here, and unique monsters such as the Glavenus roam it. In its deepest depths, spores float eerily through the air. As another starting hunting ground, the Jurassic Frontier is often assumed to be near Bherna, the starting town. This is, however, not the case. It was specifically confirmed during Monster Hunter Festa 2016 that the Jurassic Frontier is quite far from Bherna, taking several days of airship travel to reach. Moreover, it was also revealed during the same event that the frontier is actually an island, which was inaccessible until recently due to strong currents in the surrounding oceans. As far as direct information goes, this is already all that we get. We can, however, glean a few more clues from an arena map which is conjoined to the Jurassic Frontier. Wyvern's End is the area in which players fight Nakarkos, and is confirmed in-game to be somewhere on the Jurassic Frontier island. Do we have more information on this area then? Of course not, but there is one detail about its main tenant that can help us. In Principles of Creativity 2, it was revealed that Nakarkos are such powerful predators that they will sometimes even hunt Cedius down in the watery depths. This is relevant in that the main habitat of Cedius, as far as we know, is the underwater ruin network under the deserted island. This prey-predator relationship might thus imply that the Jurassic Frontier island is near Moga Island, being part of this same conspicuous cluster of islands. I do not think we can get any more precise than this, so I will simply place the Jurassic Frontier on this little island here, as it looks small enough that a couple of ocean currents could entirely cut it off from the outside world. Finally, we must now locate the ruined Pinnacle. This recently discovered hunting ground is characterized by an enormous, spire-like mountain peak that serves as the nesting grounds for Valstrax, a mysterious elder dragon that had long been considered extinct. Ruins litter the area, standing as remnants of a civilization that once lived here. This was another extremely tough case, as the ruined Pinnacle does not get any dedicated section in any of the lore books because GU doesn't have one. We do, however, get a few breadcrumbs that will carry us to victory. In the intro cutscene for Valstrax, we can see it hunting Ludroth in what looks like the open ocean, before zooming to its nest in the subsequent shot, which might imply that the Pinnacle is somewhere near water. We can, however, also assume that the ruined Pinnacle is not an island, due to statements made in one of the Principles of Creativity 2 interviews. In it, Daisuke Chihara, director of Generations Ultimate, specifically states that the monsters found in the lower areas of the Pinnacle hunting ground visit the area from surrounding regions. This matters because two of the monsters that can appear on this map are Arzuros and Kongalala, which are likely unable to cross large swaths of open ocean. Thus, I feel comfortable assuming that the ruined Pinnacle is part of a larger landmass but near a shoreline. Arzuros and Kongalala are both heavily associated with the specific hunting ground that they debuted in, Arzuros with the Misty Peaks and Kongalala with the Gen 2 jungle. I realize this is not watertight reasoning, but this aspect does compel me to place the ruined Pinnacle somewhere on the main continent. But where exactly? A huge element of the design of the ruined Pinnacle is the presence of ruins. Nearly every zone has some kind of ancient architecture present. Given that, perhaps we should place the Pinnacle somewhere we know of other ruins existing, as it could have maybe been part of a larger network of ancient cultures. One possible candidate would be to put it near the Everwood and Ancestral Steppe, as we already established that this area would likely have a large belt of ruins. I, however, don't think it fits here, for one reason. While the ruined Pinnacle was clearly inhabited by humans or Wyverians at some point, the ruins themselves were only discovered recently as of the events of Generations Ultimate. Considering how spectacular the Pinnacle is, it only having been newly found implies to me that it is located far away from any current settlements. That is why I would not put it near the Everwood or Ancestral Steppe. There are now quite a few inhabited areas around there. Instead, I think the best place for it would be here, south of the Gen 2 jungle. This place fulfills all our established criteria and is, as a bonus, decently close to both the Gen 2 jungle and the Misty Peaks, further enabling Arzuros and Kongalala migrations. And with that, we have our Monster Hunter world map updated to include all major Gen 4 locations. As I am sure you could tell, this was by far the largest challenge yet, as this generation suffered from an overall vagueness both in-game and in books regarding the wider world. Subsequently, some of the assumptions we made are a little braver than I would usually feel comfortable with, but I do think we did the best we could with what we had. Luckily, I hope that the next two generations will be easier than this. But this is it from me today. Thank you so much for watching. A big thank you to everyone who supports the channel by pledging on Patreon or being a YouTube channel member. I would like to especially thank Wandering Soul, Stormbreaker Kai, Joshua Ellison, Duna is an Octopus, Chocolate Coat, Hunter Spaniol, Precum King, Joey Tribby 58, Makamawi, Yuriv, Johnny, CJ, Carl the Crab, Christopher Bronson, Harpier, Suddenly, Suck Ooh Bus 69, Molly Mockery, Rose, Zyperius Folkvar, Hamburger Discord, Zaffi, Theopuz, Lufish, Morgul Blank, Tacti Wolf, Thyla Zero, Jacob Coleman, Hellbug Hunter, Shebo, M1 Have 1 2, Regal Eagle, Ronger 97, Quali, Mad Hat 124, My Name Gone, The Dollarfish, Sheba, Ryan Hook, Varaxis, Thick, Kuroneko, Zion H.V. Augenson, Alistair in Wonderland, Jacob the Numbnut, Soruka, Sir Newt, Evie, Rambling Robin, Hashi, Black Ace 202, Dissy, Hubbo Himbro Mirror, Magenta, Russell, Vulgar Beast, Person 212, Claire Miboon, Oakwood Tree, Mr. Pyramid, Makot 02, Nils Schlatter, Iron Camel, and Nah, I'm going to bed. Take care everyone, happy hunting.